me for my voice, but I have never seen anything like it.
Do you believe in miracles? Yes! Unbelievable.
Hey, welcome back to the show, breaking down the top 10 free agents left in the market, talking about the NFL free agency a little bit before the NFL draft. We don't know when that's going to be, but we can only assume it's going to be coming up. I hope that you guys have been being safe. I know that the coronavirus right now is at its peak, it feels like. We're going to have Alexander Haynes on the podcast later this week to talk to us about it. But first, of course, we have Television Tuesday coming up tomorrow. We did the top players of the 2000s. That's out right now, 83 through 68. You're going to want to check that out. And, of course, the NL West preview, that's going to come out. It was supposed to come out today. We're going to push it back to Wednesday for you guys. So if you're looking for that content, it's coming out Wednesday. All right, let's talk about the best players left in free agency. It's been an interesting free agency period, I think, for a lot of reasons. First off, of course, being Tom Brady moving on from the New England Patriots. He played 20 seasons with one team. Moving on is going to be difficult. It's going to be weird. And he moves on to Tampa Bay, a city and a franchise. Doesn't have a ton of playoff success. Doesn't have a ton of Super Bowl success. Of course, they have won that Super Bowl in the 2000s. But Tom Brady, pretty much a big step up from the quarterback that they had under center. That's not saying that Jameis Winston isn't a good quarterback. That's just saying that Tom Brady's, even at 42, is a little bit better. Before we get into it, before we talk about the top 10, I wanted to say that Laquan Treadwell, former first-round pick for the Minnesota Vikings, you know I had to slip this in here. He gets signed by the Atlanta Falcons. Treadwell has been one of the, if not the most disappointing wide receiver in Vikings history. Comes in, was touted as the next Dez Bryant. He has not done anything. He is a good run-blocking wide receiver, but you're not paying a run-blocking wide receiver that type of money. You don't draft a run-blocking wide receiver in the first round. That's what Treadwell has always been for the Vikings. I say good riddance. I wish him good luck in Atlanta. I hope that they are able to unlock something that Mike Zimmer wasn't able to unlock. So hopefully all the best to Treadwell, but I much rather prefer that roster spot open for a wide receiver that the Vikings are probably most likely going to draft in this year's draft class. All right, let's talk about the top 10. At number 1, 26-year-old quarterback, aforementioned Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston, of course, released by the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He comes in that draft class, number 1 overall pick, same year as Marcus Mariota. We thought that this was going to be the next great draft class. We thought this was going to be similar to Luck and RG3. We thought this was going to be one of those elite draft classes. Well, Mariota no longer a Titan. Jameis Winston no longer a Buccaneer. Are they two of the biggest draft busts in NFL history? I lean towards yes, for this reason. They came in with a lot of hype, lot of excitement around these two players, and I personally can't remember two players who have underachieved more, both in the regular season and in the playoffs. Mariota has that one excellent playoff moment where he threw a touchdown reception to himself, but even that was pretty fluky. Let's be real, guys. Pretty fluky play. Mariota has never had the type of success that we thought he was going to have. He's now an Oakland Raider. Jameis Winston, where is he going to land? So, I have him at number 1 because he's 26 years old, younger than Cam Newton, more healthy. He gets LASIK surgery in the offseason. Now, how big of an impact is that going to have? Well, let me tell you a little personal story. In 5th grade, I wasn't able to see, right? Couldn't see the blackboard. My grade in math class dropped substantially. I went from a straight A student to a guy that was barely getting by in 5th grade math. Got moved to the front of the class, was squinting all the time, had bad headaches. Minute I got glasses, righted the ship. Was able to get back on the right track, and now I'm a genius. So, what does that mean for Mariota, or what it means for Jameis? Jameis gets LASIK surgery in the offseason after being the first quarterback in NFL history to throw 30 picks along with 30 touchdowns. I think that this is a guy who still has talent, Scouts normally aren't wrong with first-round grades, let alone wrong with first overall pick grades. So I think that there's still something in there for Jameis. I think that there is a diamond in the rough, but it needs to be the right team. Look around at the teams who are drafting high in this year's draft class. The Cincinnati Bengals. Well, they're going to get Burrow. The Miami Dolphins. Well, they've already pretty much put their cart on Tua. What about the Lions? Do they go after Justin Herbert? Do they go after somebody else? Look, there's a lot of teams early in the draft that are going to go after quarterbacks, and I don't blame them. And I don't think any of those teams are going to go after Jameis. But you look at a team like the Chargers, and my favorite, a team like the Patriots, to go after Jameis Winston. And I'll give you the reason why it works for both those teams. We'll start with the Chargers. LA Chargers, they leave San Diego, a home that had fans, pretty good stadium, history. They leave all of that behind and go to LA, a city who we talk about LA sports fans all the time, how I prefer the West Coast sports fans a little bit more than I prefer the East Coast sports fans a little bit more than the West Coast sports fans. East Coast sports fans, I think, have a little bit less going on. West Coast sports fans, too much going on. You can do too many different things. And I say this to say that the Chargers need a franchise quarterback. You can't be in LA without a star quarterback. And I don't think you can draft a guy who played at a mid-major school. You can't draft a guy that hasn't won a national championship. You can't draft a guy who doesn't have name recognition. If you're the Chargers, you're not selling the seat licenses. You need to sell jerseys. You need to make up some revenue. Jameis Winston's going to sell jerseys. Former Heisman winner, former national champion, fun guy. Even if he's a meme a lot of the time, he's a fun guy. People like him. If you poll some NFL fans, they're not going to say, I'd love to have Jameis Winston under center, but they'd say they love Jameis Winston. He's a fun guy. It's fun to watch play. Big arm, sometimes makes dumb decisions, but hey, that happens. It's the fact that Jameis was in Tampa Bay. You weren't watching his games. Let's be honest, guys. You weren't watching Tampa Bay games last year. Unless you live in the area, unless you're in the regional deal, unless you were watching a team in that division, the Tampa Bay Bucks are on, you're probably not tuning it in. Playing in L.A., even though the Chargers don't have fans lining up to buy seat licenses, I think Chargers fans all over the country are going to tune in to see what Jameis has. And let's be honest, guys. You get rid of Melvin Gordon, they still have a pretty decent offensive line, pretty decent weapons. I like Winston going to the Chargers. He sells jerseys, makes sense. He's Hollywood. Who says no? Then we flip over to the exact opposite situation. A situation that he doesn't really have many weapons. He's got a good offensive line, better one than the Chargers do. But he's got a coach, no nonsense. Nobody is a fun-loving guy around Bill Belichick. Look, Rob Gronkowski almost drove him crazy. Must have driven him crazy. Going on cruises, doing the whole WWE thing. Bill Belichick's no nonsense. He's got 6 rings for a reason. He's a hard ass. He's a lunch pail, hard hat type of coach. And it works. New England, blue collar, those fans love it up there. But you got a guy like Tom Brady leaving. Tom Brady, he wants the attention. He wants the love. He wants money. He wants to feel wanted. That's not Belichick. Belichick will cut a guy 2 years early rather than 2 years late. I think he sees the writing on the wall. He doesn't want Brady around at 45. He barely wanted Brady around at 40. So you get a guy like Winston, 26 years old, prime of his career. You don't have to teach this guy how to be an NFL quarterback. He's done it before, made a Pro Bowl. You don't have to teach this guy how to read a defense because, honestly, the system you're running is pretty simple. You don't have big play wide receivers. You don't have big play tight ends. You don't have big play running backs. But if you get a big play quarterback, a guy who's not scared to throw the deep ball, a guy who's not scared to put the ball where maybe another quarterback might be a little afraid to, might be a little timid, feels a little pressure in the pocket, He's a little slower because he's older. Maybe he doesn't make that throw. Winston will sit in the pocket. Winston will chunk that ball down the field. He's got a rocket arm. So when you look at the Patriots, you look at the system that they have. Josh McDaniels is still there. Belichick is still there. They still have the system in place. And if they can just protect Winston with an offensive line that's decent, they don't make the reads super complex. They're not going up there with a 50-year-old quarterback who's seen every single play in the world. You're going to have to be a little bit... The coaches are going to have to be a little bit better. McDaniels isn't going to be able to sit on his haunches and say, well, my quarterback can read the defense. He'll see what happens before it happens. The same way that when the Broncos lost Peyton Manning, when he couldn't throw the ball anymore, they kind of got left stuck. Because when you don't have a quarterback out there that can read everything and knows 5 plays advance what the defense is going to do, well, then you have to coach a little bit harder. Got to be a little bit better. And that's where coaches get exposed. Okay? I think that Winston fits into New England about as well as any other quarterback would. Now, I know right now a lot of people are saying, well, Andy Dalton would fit in. Trade a second or third, maybe even a fourth. Get Andy Dalton to come in. You have a stable quarterback. Cam Newton, same thing. MVP, played in the Super Bowl. Probably a little bit smarter than Winston, if we're being completely honest. He just needs to be healthy, and boom, he's a big play quarterback. I like both of those, but I think you're going to get Winston on a cheaper deal for New England. You don't want to spend big money on a quarterback. That's why you let Brady leave. I think Winston fits the Patriots great. And think about this. If you're Belichick, the same way that Brady's trying to get success without Belichick, same way that Brady's trying to figure out his place in the NFL without Belichick, Winston's doing the same thing. Tampa Bay doesn't want you. Why don't you go fill in with Brady, have Belichick be the coach that turns your career around? All of a sudden, Belichick's looking like the winner in this. He didn't have to pay a 42-year-old quarterback big quarterback money. He got a younger, cheaper, honestly a little bit more physically talented quarterback, and they win the division, and they go face off against Lamar Jackson or Patrick Mahomes. And you're telling me that Belichick can't outcoach John Harbaugh or Andy Reid? He's done it before. All I'm saying is that if you think the Patriots are going to sit on their haunches, you think the Patriots are just going to let this season roll by, I got news for you. That's not the Patriot way. All right, let's move on to number 2. Robbie Anderson, 27-year-old wide receiver. Now, I was making this list. I had a little trouble. I was saying to myself, Andrew, where's a wide receiver fit into this? With a historically deep draft class, where do you put a wide receiver like Robbie Anderson? And I said, I think he's number 2. And here's why. Because I think that in the NFL, you need to have leadership. I think that that's an underrated aspect. And you get a young wide receiver in here. We've already seen it with Diggs. We've seen it with a lot of other guys who have a little bit of success, and they kind of blow up. Antonio Brown's another prime example. But I think that there's like bigger issues with Brown. Diggs, I think, is a prime example of this. He got a little bit of success, had an iconic moment. All of a sudden, he thinks every other pass should go to him. Robbie Anderson's not like that. Robbie Anderson's a lunch pail, hard hat guy. This is the type of dude that you give a cheap contract to, a prove-it contract, an incentive-based contract. Put him in the locker room with a bunch of young guys, and he'll be a leader. We've seen it happen before. I like Robbie Anderson. At 27 years old, he's got one more contract, I think. One more 2-3-year contract. If we can get him on a decent-sized contract anywhere in the league, I think he fits in with a lot of teams really well. I think he still has enough speed. I think he's still a good enough wide receiver to make an impact on a lot of teams. Robbie Anderson is number 2. Number 3 is Clowney at 27, the edge rusher. He got a pretty good deal for Seattle this year. When he's healthy, he's one of the best edge rushers in the league. Here's my only problem with Clowney. He's also known to be lazy. Now, it's going to seem pretty wild because I'm going to continue to go to the same team. New England needs to kind of revamp. I think they're going to be able to get some of these guys on cheap deals. Clowney feels like a Patriot-type player, somebody that everybody's going to pass over. Him, Robbie Anderson, and Winston, I think all our 3 guys aren't going to get signed before the NFL draft. I think all 3 of those guys are going to see teams pick up players. I think their numbers for their contracts are going to go down. I think they're all going to get prove-it deals. But you give me Clowney on a team, a decent team, where he can fit and make it work. Look, you're going to play for Bill O'Brien, you're going to have trouble. Nobody has seemed to work with Bill O'Brien. He's not a good coach. It happens. You go to Seattle, you get banged up. But look, he still was an impactful player. Seattle just didn't have a run game this year. Their defense wasn't great, but Clowney was still really good. I think that a team that needs an edge rusher is going to go after Clowney. But again, I don't see him getting signed before the draft because you're going to look around what young talent's out there. You're going to go through your draft. You're going to see who you get before you go to Clowney. Same with Winston, same with Robbie Anderson. All right, at number 4, I have Marcus Golden, a cornerback, 29 years old. It's a little bit old for a corner. I'm not completely in love with it, but again, a type of guy who is going to be a second or third corner. This is a guy who, I hate to bring up the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings need corners. Vikings need corners bad. So if they can draft a wide receiver, a corner, and a guard in this draft, those are really the 3 primary positions I think that they are looking for. If they can't get a corner that they really love, if they can't get a corner in that first or second round, say they drop down to the third round, I would just move on and try to sign Golden because I think that he's a good enough wide receiver, or I'm sorry, a good enough corner, I should say, to shut down other teams' wide receivers. At number 5 on the list, Jermaine Ifedi, who is a guard, or should I say a tackle, another guy from the Seattle Seahawks. Look, the Seahawks didn't have a great offensive line this year, but I don't really blame him entirely. He's a young offensive tackle. He is only 25. So you look at a guy like that who I think can make a impact somewhere on the field. Do I think that it's going to be a guy... Do I think he's going to be an every down offensive tackle? No, I think he's going to have to prove himself. I think he's going to come in on a cheaper deal. This is a guy who I don't anticipate getting signed right off the bat. But again, another guy, an offensive tackle, a position that I think a lot of people need. I don't think he'll be a left tackle. He wasn't good enough in Seattle to play left tackle. I think he's going to be a right tackle for a team who needs it. I'm looking at you, Houston Texans. All right, moving on to number 6, Von Bell. Let's talk about Von Bell and Ndamukong Suh, Everson Griffin, and Eric Reed. All guys who, defensive players. I have them at 6, 8, 9, and 10. Von Bell and Eric Reed. Why am I taking Von Bell over Eric Reed? Well, one, he's younger. He's 25 versus Eric Reed's 28. Bell doesn't have a history of being a problem in the locker room. Now, do I agree with Eric Reed on every topic? No. Do I agree with him on his Colin Kaepernick point? Emphatically. Do I think that that's going to push teams away? Yes. I 100% think that Eric Reed won't get signed till the very last second in this year's offseason because of the baggage that he carries. Now, is that wrong? Yes. Because he is a talented safety. But so is Von Bell, who's younger, doesn't have the baggage. I think that Reed does. And he played for the Saints last year. And Sean Payton's been known to get his former players on teams. Whether you like it or not, head coaches have a lot of pull, a lot of impact on where their former players go. If you make a good decision, make good business moves with a coach, and the GM just can't afford to keep you around, your agent says, we can't take a penny less. It's been known for coaches to go out of their way and put good word in for players. And from everything I've read, everything I've heard from Von Bell, I think that he's a solid player. I think he's a solid guy. Breshad Perriman, 26 years old, played for Tampa Bay Bucks last year. Another wide receiver. There's only 2 receivers on here. The problem with Perriman, I think, was that he got in the same system as Godwin and Evans. And that, I think, hurt his numbers. He's not talented as either one of those guys, but another guy who can be a second or third receiver on a team. There's a ton of teams this year who are going to be looking for receiver talent. And even though this draft is very deep, there are teams that don't have the draft picks that they need to make those type of moves. That's why I have Perriman at number 7. Ndamukong Suh and Everson Griffin at 8 and 9. Let me tell you a little bit about both those guys. Both of them formerly played for NFC North teams. In Sue is a different case. Sue is now on his third team in 3 years. Okay, went from Tampa Bay to now playing for the Rams. Now I think he went back to Tampa Bay. A lot of baggage, a lot of movement for Sue. Is that great? No. It's not good when you're playing for multiple teams in multiple years. What I will say is I still think that he is a solid defensive tackle. He is 33 years old, a little bit old for a guy who can play every down, but at the same time, he has a very long streak. Am I saying he's due for an injury? Yeah. That I think is going to be a big concern for NFL GMs. I think that they're going to look at him. He's played a ton of snaps. There's been a lot of big games. He's got banged around a lot, playing some playoff games. I think people are a little worried about how he can hold himself together. At the same time, though, if you're Sue, your agent is telling people, hey, we can stay around. We're a player that wants to play until he's in his mid to late 30s. I think that Sue is going to be a good pickup for a playoff team if he can get on a team that is knocking on the door. I don't think the Chiefs are going to be really willing to pay for a multi-year contract, but if they can get him a cheap contract, he's a good player for the Chiefs, same way that I would say he's a good player for the Titans. If the Titans want to spend a little bit of money this offseason to really shore up their defensive line, Ndamukong Suh's another guy. I think that he's just hunting for that ring at this point. If Sue ends his career as an NFL champion, as a Super Bowl winner, I think that puts a little bit more gleam, a little bit more shimmer on his Hall of Fame resume. He's not there yet, but if he can stick around for a couple seasons, I think that he'll be knocking on that door and getting his gold jacket. Everson Griffen at number 9, and that'll do it for the podcast. Former Viking. Vikings just don't have the money, man. This is it. They had last year as their team to really compete for a Super Bowl. I think that you're slowly seeing the wheels falling off. Diggs is gone. Griffin's gone. Sendejo's gone. It's slowly but surely falling apart in Minnesota. And if Griffin leaves, this will be just another one of those dominoes falling on a incredible run. The Vikings now are going to be one of those teams that you're going to look back on and say, damn, they had 5 or 6 great title windows that they just never could get over the hump. They're one of the only teams not to have a Super Bowl. They also are the team, and I think that this is correct, so if I'm incorrect, please fact check me. I think they were the team with the most NFC Championship appearances without a Super Bowl win. I'm 99% sure that is an accurate fact. So, if you want to fact check me, please fact check me. But I'm pretty sure that is a fact at this point. So, Griffin is going to go to a team that needs an edge rusher. He flirted with the Jets last year. I think that's probably going to be a place where he might end up. The Giants the same way. You'll get a younger player in the draft. You pair him next to Griffin, who still has a little bit left in the tank. You have a pretty good defense. The NFC East, as much as people want to pretend that it's the Cowboys' division to win, I think it's also their division to lose. The Giants, if Daniel Jones takes a big step up and their defense shores up, I think that they could be a team knocking on that door as well. All right, that's going to do it for the podcast. Tomorrow, we have a big Television Tuesday, and we're breaking down 3 TV shows. That's a lot. So we're doing 11/23/60. That's a miniseries on Hulu that I just watched. And then Devs on FXX and Dave on FXX. So we're going to do all of that. And Wednesday, we have the NL West preview. We didn't put it out today because I just thought we put out enough content for today. Wanted to spread it out for you guys. Hopefully, you guys continue to wash your hands. Please stay safe. This coronavirus is only going to get worse before it gets better. But I tell you, I think we're looking at the light at the end of the tunnel. It's getting there, guys. We just need to push through it. Please continue to social distance yourself. Stop the spread of this virus. All right, that's going to do it for the podcast. I will talk to you guys tomorrow. Be safe.